Is live. Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone to the Wildscast. Welcome, Daniel. I have this is
Rabbi.
one of the. All right, I'm gonna jump in with an introduction, but I have to preface my introduction with the word nachas. Nachas is the Jewish word for joy, but it's supposed to capture the kind of joy that only a parent or a teacher can have. And you'll hear, and those of you tuning in to our Wildscast will hear exactly what I'm talking about. Daniel Ryan Wallach is a curious kid from Palo Alto, California. I'm reading his bio. Bugged by a loud and persistent question, what does it mean to be Jewish? Daniel was thrust into a strange, random, and wonderful journey that brought him to MJE on a Shabbat morning back in 2019. And my friends listening to this, I will never forget when Daniel showed up on that Saturday morning. Daniel chose Rabbi Wilds, it says here, as his mentor the day he met him, and continues to say yes to everything MGE has to offer. Everything? I think I've mentioned a few things to you haven't said yes to. Like I never got the $1 billion check in the mail.
I'm working on it, Rabbi. I'm working on it.
Okay, cool. As Daniel was completing the MG Fellowship Program in 2020, the world shut down with COVID-19. Confused with the world and eager to continue a path of self-growth, Daniel made a sudden decision last December to fly to Israel and to study in Yeshiva, in seminary, where he has been learning. Daniel's an actor with a special interest in Shakespeare, working in regional theater before he arrived in New York City. When he was in New York, Daniel, and he continues to pursue his artistic talent, teaching theater to kids, and he also dabbles in real estate. Daniel's a graduate of the Cal Arts School of Theater and has got a BFA in acting. Welcome, Daniel Wallach.
Thank you, Rabbi. You should mention that you did not write that bio. I wrote that bio. I just want everyone to know that.
Yeah, it would be a little presumptuous of me to write a bio that says that Daniel chose Rabbi Wilds as his mentor the day he met him.
Yeah.
So, but everyone should just know that one of the reasons, there are many reasons why we're interviewing Daniel today, and this is actually the first time I've ever had the opportunity to interview a student and a friend from MJE, is because he's going to be honored at the MJE annual dinner. When is that?
2 weeks from today, Tuesday.
Oh my gosh,
yes?
It's 2 weeks from tonight. That's crazy. The 16th of June, Tuesday night, the 16th of June, which is very, very exciting. Oh no, Wednesday night. It's 2 weeks from tomorrow night.
Rabbi, I want you to know that I spent some time thinking about this award, this Student of the Year situation, and I completely figured it out. I completely figured out why you're honoring me with this most prestigious award, and I understand now that it is 100% only has to do with improving a shidduch profile.
It's just getting harder and harder to marry people off, and even though we only do a dinner once a year, we could at least ensure that one person from Manhattan Jewish Experience will get married by honoring them with this prestigious award. 100%. It will. By the way, everybody who gets this award gets married within the next 2 years. Just saying.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure, Rabbi.
Yeah, but I do want to correct a false impression that I just created, that MG only has one engagement a year. We have an average of 15. You should just know. That's how we got it up to 337 so far. You can do the math. But let's talk to you, Daniel. I thought you just read my book and showed up on a Saturday morning. But someone else shared with me that you found MGE through a dating app. Now, can you tell us that story?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll do what I can.
Yeah, we only have an hour, so let's cut to the chase.
Okay, chill out. We'll get there. So long story short, I began to engage with the question, what does it mean to be Jewish? Very slowly. It was something that was always in the far back of my mind. And every once in a while, maybe every couple of years, it would kind of shake like in a locked box in the back of my mind. What does it mean to be Jewish? And I would never particularly deal with the question and it became time to deal with the question, or to begin to approach the question. I was before I came east, I was back in the Bay Area. I was doing a production of I was on contract to doing a production of Hamlet in the Bay Area, and I had some time in the day, and I began to engage with this question. And I spoke with the rabbi back where in Palo Alto, who was somewhat helpful. He wasn't a Kiruv rabbi, but he was helpful in kind of beginning this kind of help with this question in my mind. And I also began writing at the time. I was working with a self-help book for actors. For artists. And one of the instructions in this book was to vaguely write 3 pages a day to God. And this was not a concept. I did not have a concept for what God was to me at the time, but I began to write these 3 pages every day. And at the time, I was, writing these 3 pages a day to reconnect with my own sense of artistry. Drama school was a lot, and I needed this book was to help me to reconnect with what was so exciting to me about my work as an artist. But the question, what does it mean to be Jewish, fell deeply into my pages, into this kind of dialogue I thought I was having in my pages. And I eventually went east to New York. I wanted to go to New York because I wanted to be around the actors in New York, who were much more exciting to me than they were in Los Angeles. It's a different matter. And one day, months later, I was completely let go of the question, what does it mean to be Jewish, for a while. But one day I was sitting at a Starbucks, and I got really, really disappointed with how reliant I was on my technology. How deeply I was connected to it. I felt like a cyborg. And I just said, okay, I'm going to turn off all my technology that night. It was a Friday. I said, I'm going to turn off all my technology because I think that's what Jews do. I'm going to turn off all my technology. This was just 2 years and a couple months ago. And then the next day I said, okay, that was interesting, turning off all my technology. I'm going to go to a shul. I'm going to see what that's all about. And I went to this shul, and it wasn't my vibe. I did not have a good time. There was no one my age there. There was barely a minyan. And then
this was not, of course, the Manhattan Jewish experience.
This is not the Manhattan Jewish experience. Then I went to the next week. I said, okay, I'll try turning off my technology again. I think at this point I understood you turn off your technology for the 25 hours of Shabbat. I believe the week previous I thought it was 24. And you had
never really done a Shabbos, or just like a turn off of technology.
No. This was all entirely new to me. And then, okay, so the following week I said, okay, I'll turn off all my technology again. I'll go to a different shul. And I went to a different shul, and it was not my thing. It was this kumbaya experience, and I didn't know what I was looking for, but I know it wasn't this. And there was also no one my age there who seemed to be asking similar. First of all, there was no one my age there, but I was looking for people my age asking similar questions. What does it mean to be Jewish? And where are the people who deal with people my age, like me, asking these questions? And the next day after this, it was a Sunday. I was on the phone with my best friend, and I was telling him, this is really disappointing me, because I have these questions, and I want to, I'm ready to deal with this and confront these questions. But it doesn't seem like there's anyone my age asking these questions. It doesn't seem like I'm able to find anyone who deals with people like me. And I got off the phone with him, and I immediately started flipping through my phone. I was flipping through a dating app, just a normal Sunday, and I saw an advertisement for a kosher wine tasting. And I don't actually drink, but I never heard of the organization who was running this kosher wine tasting. So I looked it up, I learned, it was run by this rabbi whose entire life work was bringing disenfranchised Jews back to their heritage, introducing young Jews to essentially, who they are, their history, their heritage. And okay, so I looked at this guy's, and don't flatter yourself, Rabbi. It says, I'm speaking about you in the third person. Uh, uh, so I looked at this, this guy's content on YouTube, some of his talks. This entertaining, nerdy, dad-like figure who had a lot of interesting things to say. And then I was walking to, I had, at the time I had a couple of day jobs, and I was walking to one of them in the city. Maybe I was working at a hotel, and I passed a Judaica shop, and I walked in, and the first book that I saw was Beyond the Instant. And so I grabbed the book and I brought it home, and I started to read the book. And what was interesting about the book was that a lot of curiosities and questions that I was cycling through in the pages that I was writing every day were very similar curiosities to the ones that were in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished the book at 2 a.m. on a Shabbat, Friday night at 2 a.m. And then I showed up at the MJE on, a couple hours later for morning davening. It was the first time, I arrived at this place. It was the first time I'd ever seen a mechitza in my life. I barely knew you. You served in, you were an Orthodox rabbi. I barely, I didn't know anything. I just knew that, this was where I was going to be that Saturday. And, the davening itself, it was a beautiful space. People my age were walking in focused, with a sense of determination. The Chazan, was, overly welcoming, not just welcoming in the set because it's a Kirov organization, but because he was, deeply connected and deeply passionate about sharing with the space. And, the focus in the room and everything, I got this sense that there was something right about the space. It kind of like a Goldilocks principle. Like, the previous couple of weeks I was something was too much. The next thing wasn't enough, and then something felt like it.
This fit. And did what? I'm just curious. First of all, thank you, and you should just know, Daniel, that I remember you coming really on time. Not everybody comes on time to services, as you know, and you came not at 9:30, but at 9:15. The service starts at 9:30. You showed up at 9:15, and we have just a small group of people that we study, and that got put on hold during COVID. We're actually starting it up this coming weekend. Just a little what's called a Dvar Halacha. Just some.
This is what happens when I leave, Rabbi.
Yeah,
everything. Start canceling programming.
Yeah, well, it had something to do with COVID also. Our minion went from 100 to 20, overnight. So it was hard to get those few people at 9:15. But I remember you showing up at 9:15, and just like Rabbi, I finished your book last night, and I came to learn. And I just thought that was. I've been doing this for 22 years at MJ. I've never had anyone who just read something that I wrote, showed up, and said, "Okay, teach me." And you haven't left. I mean, it's been pretty unbelievable. I think our listeners are missing some information, though. Tell us a little about your background. I mean, I know you didn't grow up in an observant Jewish home. What was it like transitioning into learning more about Judaism, eventually joining our fellowships, and now taking the year and studying in Israel, in a pretty serious yeshiva in Israel? Tell us a little how that transition developed, and what was your parents and your family's reaction?
Right. Well, I was born and raised in Palo Alto, California, and I didn't grow up in a religious household. We had, I always grew up with the sense that it was important to be Jewish. That was something that was very important in my household. and there were small gestures towards Jewish things, but in the end it was shul just twice a year for the high holidays, and I didn't, I chose. It was my decision to not have a bar mitzvah because I was focused on. I was a performer as a kid. I was focused on, that's what I was doing at the time, and I I didn't, I thought maybe I'll do it sometime later in my life.
By the way,
But
just to jump in on, I don't know if you ever had the bar mitzvah, but you could. I know you've spent a year in yeshiva already, and it
well,
seems like a little
it's interesting.
superfluous, but you could still. We've had bar mitzvahs of people in their 20s and 30s. I love that.
Well, you sent me on a Shabbaton a couple sukkahs, 2 sukkahs ago, and I had my first parsha. I had my first aliyah
Mm-hmm.
at a shul there. I didn't plan on this. Someone told one of the rabbis that I'd never given given and had an aliyah before. Didn't ask them to do this. I just shouted it out, and I thought, okay, I'll go up and I'll give my aliyah just like everyone else does it. And then the rabbi of the congregation makes an announcement to everyone. This is visiting from MJE, his first aliyah. And I can say I'll say the bracha just like everyone else says it. Yeah, and it'd be great. But then the room erupts in song and dance after I finish it. And
That's beautiful. That's amazing. How did that make? What was that like for you?
Strange. Oh, it was strange.
Okay.
They
were trying to be nice.
Right. The name of the shul was the exact same name of the shul that I did not have my bar mitzvah at growing up, which was interesting.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, I didn't grow up religious. The transition into learning with MJE, it was odd. It was all new to me. I didn't have a taste for Torah learning. I didn't have or at least not a natural one that perhaps people who grow up in that environment do. I had a taste to assuage deep curiosities that would eventually lead to a taste for Torah learning. But one day I showed up at MJE on a Wednesday night, and I walked into the white room, and there was 75 people in the room sitting down in pairs, and I was like, what are they doing? What is I was like, what is going on in this room? And all of my, and I'm
for those of you listening, by the way, that's MJ's 101 learning program. Just so you know.
Right. So I was every step I was taking was just kind of dipping my foot in, and I was saying yes to things. Occasionally you leave me a voicemail like 11:30 at night. I'm like, what is it like? It's like, and we're talking about opportunities, and I was like, okay, I had more of a habit. I had a habit of saying yes out of optimism, and out of an optimism that I'm today, of course, thankful for. And I it was I don't know. It was a strange shift, but certainly a shift that I'm happy about.
Thank God. And your family, how are they dealing with it?
I think I don't have any pushback from my family. I think everyone's I think that perhaps I fail at articulating what exactly that I do with MJE, or what I'm learning, or what I'm learning in yeshiva, or things like that. But nothing. I think at least for my father, is a general sense that Jewish things are good things.
That's good.
But yeah, it's a strange, outside of the family, right? Outside of the family, it's things like learning in yeshiva. These are very difficult things to articulate to people. These are very difficult things to explain to people. Because then you'll start getting questions like, "Oh, so you're becoming like a rabbi?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not becoming a rabbi. I'm not studying to be a rabbi." Uh, um,
That's funny.
the
And
concept of going to a place,
no, please
the
keep
concept of going
talking.
to a place and learning, the concept of going to a place and learning, just for the sake of the learning in and of itself, I think is a strange, can at times be a strange concept to people. The end. No, the end goal is not becoming a rabbi. The end goal is uh, becoming a better version of myself.
And I'm curious how your friends. We'll get to your acting background soon, but I'm curious how your friends in the acting world, your colleagues, are they positive about it? Are they supportive? Are they, look, whatever makes you happy, dude? I mean, what's their
Yeah,
um,
I think most of the people that I'm close with are fairly. I think performers are very spiritual people.
mhm,
Uh, so I think most of the people who know me well enough, and who I've spoken with some about my journey, my curiosities, towards my curiosity towards my Jewishness, are very open about it. I have an amazing class, and I was invited into this class in the city, this acting class in the city, that I normally, outside of COVID times, I was in class with them 5 hours every Tuesday. Just a really, some of New York's finest actors, and kind of like, we go to this space and we work on our stuff like at a gym kind of a thing.
mhm.
And um, you know I stayed connected with them while I was in yeshiva. Long story short, our class kind of went virtual, as everything went virtual with
Sure,
COVID.
sure.
And I was able to take my class while I was in yeshiva. I would take it on Tuesday nights after learning, and I would experiment in a kind of way in explaining what I was doing in yeshiva and explaining the kind of learning that I was doing, and, and the environment was very receptive to it. I think, personally, I think there's a lot of similarities between the things that I was learning in yeshiva and the kind of things I've been working to grow on as an artist. Um, and yeah, I feel as though I had a very
Wow,
warm reception from my fellow performers.
beautiful. And what was the well, first of all, you made a decision to go to yeshiva right before COVID, or like as it was setting in, and it was a very, very bold move. You literally you got into Israel, one of the literally last flights I remember. They weren't letting anyone in else afterwards. It's almost as though like the Almighty, got involved with El Al and just like, wait, let this guy in. He's got to get in over there. Did the
Right,
pandemic make it easier or harder for you to engage in serious Torah study in yeshiva?
right. Well, just a small background on how I wound up at yeshiva. It was not something I had any interest. Oh, there we go. Okay. No, hold on 1 second. There we go. So I I it was okay. For just a short period, little bit of backgrounds. Occasionally, you and I would sit and we'd talk about things, and occasionally you'd bring up this concept of yeshiva, which is not something at the time that I had particularly known all that much about, but it was not something that I was interested in at all. Um, and I knew you would bring it up maybe every 3 months, and I'd say yay, okay, but no. Um,
You're
and
very polite, very polite.
um, you know, so the Wednesday night learning, which we began uh, with fellowship. So I tried out a couple of chavrutas. I had a great chavruta who had to leave, so I needed a new one, and Rabbi Klein, Shuki, kept offering me new chavrutas, and I said, I don't like this one, no, not this one. And then another one would come, and I say, no, we'll try the next one. And then one came and sits down, and he tells me that he was roommates with a very dear friend of mine in Yeshiva at a place called Machon Yakov. I had my friend named Drew Feldman, who I studied acting with. He's directed me in a couple of things throughout the years. He went to study at Machon Yakov, and so his roommate sits down and tells me that this is who he knows, and I said, oh, this must be my chavruta. And eventually, COVID would shut everything down. COVID would shut the world down. And August, I was happy with my learning with MJE, but I wasn't sure about what to do. All the theaters were shut down. It's not like I was auditioning. It's not, it's not like I had much movement forward.
Well, I took full advantage of that reality. I said to you and to Dylan. Dylan is another MG participant who is an actor who also I was able to convince to go learn in Yeshiva. I was like, guys, you're not going to get a gig for at least another year. Nothing's happening in this town. You might as well use this time wisely. But anyway, continue. That's how you found Machon Yakov, was through.
That's how I learned. In August, I spoke to Drew and I said, okay, look, this is where I'm at. I wanted to ask him about this yeshiva thing. And we had a long conversation about where I was in the world and what I was looking to do. And we kind of came to the conclusion that I didn't have much justification to not consider something like yeshiva. And I said, okay, fine, I'll have a couple of conversations with a couple of rabbis. I didn't have a decision or anything like that. And I spoke with a couple of people. You sent me a couple of people to speak to. I spoke with a couple of people. And I eventually spoke with Rabbi Jacobs at Machon Yakov. And we had a fine conversation. I didn't have a decision or anything like that. But the next day he messages me. This was the first week of September. The next day he messages me and he says, look, the state of Israel is going to shut down. And if you want to come, you have to come now. And so what happened is that I was on a plane 5 days after that. And that's how I wound up in yeshiva.
Yeah. That's incredible.
And yeah, I want to be clear about why I chose Machon Yakov. And it wasn't just that, I had a friend who went there, and I do trust my friend. I trust Drew very well, who also just got married. I zoomed into the wedding a couple weeks ago. And Machon Yakov it's a Musar-focused yeshiva. It's a yeshiva deeply focused in the world of character development, in the world of, I think, developing young mensches into becoming as developed gentlemen as possible to bring, to be the best of themselves for the people around them, to be the best of themselves for their friends, their loved ones, their family, with being the best of themselves for their business endeavors, artistic endeavors. That's a lot of what we focused on in yeshiva. There was, we had deep Talmud study, we had deep Chumash study, and everything, but it was all connected into developing the individual, into, I believe Rabbi Gershenfeld talks about actualizing a person towards their full potential. So anyway, your question about how did
but that's actually with, even before you get to COVID, though, I have to say that is a really important point to dwell on for a moment, because I think a lot of people feel if they go to yeshiva, they're going to be entering this foreign environment, and I'm sure it's a very different environment from Palo Alto, California, or even New York City, but that it's like this kind of disconnected, you're going to be studying in the Talmud, my ox gores your ox, and it's nothing to do with anything. And I think it's important for people to hear what you just shared, Daniel, that you're learning how to become the best version of yourself, and you're learning how to actualize your potential. I think that's really beautiful. And of course, the Talmud is part of that. but
Right.
you're saying that in the yeshiva they focus on texts and curriculum that help you develop your personality and your character.
It's exactly what we did at Machon Yakov. I mean, and one of our rabbis, he's a PhD in positive psychology. It was all work. We did a lot of deep work we had 2 weeks on. We had like 2 or 3 week long sessions on things like anger, or things like honoring your parents, kibbud av v'em, working towards deep integration of the text itself, the learning itself, these works from rabbis from thousands of years ago, and or Mezillah Yesharim every Wednesday night, but working towards integration. Machon Yaakov caps their learning at 1 or 2 years. They do not want, for the most part, they want students to go back and engage with the world, go back to their lives, and engage as fully as possible with as much of themselves as they can bring.
Are you sure you're not being paid by Machon Yaakov here? This is a great commercial.
I think the bigger question is, am I being paid by you?
Well, listen, that's obvious. You've been an MG poster child for a long time now, but that's a really beautiful thing. And tell us about then when you were in yeshiva, and I know because you and I spent a lot of time during the year, and usually when students from MG sort of graduate from MG, they go off to yeshiva, they find new rabbis and teachers, which you've done. But I love the fact that we've continued our connection and we've continued to study. And you were telling me in the beginning how challenging it was. It was challenging in the beginning to study Talmud, and because it's a whole new way of thinking. It's a pretty rigorous, analytical way, critical way of ripping apart a text. But it seemed like you really came into that. What was it eventually about studying Talmud that really got you?
Okay, so the second I began to approach Talmud learning, Gemara learning in the mornings, I would get these splitting headaches, like actual headaches. I thought that these were muscles I hadn't touched upon in a long time. We were dissecting the Aramaic, dissecting the Hebrew within the Hebrew and the Aramaic, and then the reasoning within the Talmud, all those parts coming together, the structure of the Talmud, then the narrative of the Talmud, and then the different languages, and then my mind was getting ready to explode, and I could feel physical pain, and eventually that eased, and I had difficulties for months with my Talmud learning. I was growing in my ability to memorize, and to take we had there was a couple different rabbis who led shiurs in the morning for Talmud, for morning shiur, and I had difficulty because I don't have an academic technical approach first. That's not an avenue in that I'm going to connect with. And I was eventually able to fully articulate the struggles that I was having. But there were small breakthroughs that I was able to begin to make. And one of them was somewhat of a different approach to Talmud learning that I was able to grow in at Machon Yaakov, which was that I started to get really interested in the narrative of what was going on in the Talmud. Beginning with the structure, beginning with the what move is this, and then with charts on the board, and that approach first. I was having difficulty with this. I needed to fully embrace the narrative, what was going on, pulling the people, pulling the situations off the page, pulling the rabbis off the page, and seeing what's going on. Who are these people? What are the situations that they're dealing with? the laws that that these rabbis are working to understand, to express. I needed to see the people in it. And so I did tiny things. Like I started to make puppets out of paper,
I heard about this. Tell us
that I
about the
could.
puppets.
I started to make puppets out of paper that I could use to illustrate. Okay, here's the man. Here's the man. Here's the wife. Here's the money. Here's the this needs to be exchanged for this, or here's the adim, here's the witnesses, and they're over here. There's the judge over here. There's the husband over there. He's got to get over there, and then I'm gonna create this kind of dialogue to see how exactly this would play out. Because the more I connected with the narrative, the more I put this is I actually
You
I
brought a
didn't plan for
puppet
this
with you?
question at all.
You brought
I
a
brought
puppet?
I brought a couple bugs.
Let's see.
This is
Whoa.
Blima. This is Blima. I called her Blima.
She's very attractive. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Blima.
Uh-huh.
This was my money.
Uh-huh.
These are my adim, my witnesses.
Two
Very
witnesses.
necessary.
Right.
Yeah. This was a star, a bill
Oh,
of debt.
very good. Oh, wow. Oh, 2,000 shkolim.
Yeah.
And is this, Daniel, is this,
Yeah,
first of all, I love
exactly.
I love
So
these puppets.
I was
Is
able
this,
to.
you're saying to embrace the narrative. Is it, you're more of a visual thinker and therefore seeing, I guess, the characters in the Talmud, like in physical, in some represented or symbolized in some kind of physical form, that made it simpler to follow what we call the shakla v'tarya, the back and forth of the Talmud. I guess that's A. I mean, tell me if.
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
I think so. I think so. So I was eventually given a tutor in the mornings, an amazing rabbi who would suffer through me every morning for 2 hours, Rabbi
Uh-huh.
Seipash. And we would go through the Talmud. We'd go through the Gemara, and if something wasn't clear to me, if something wasn't clicking, I pulled out my puppets and I gave them names, and I gave them a situation, and he would tell me whether where where I if my grasp of what was going on was strong, or if or I would
Or you
or I
needed
would
some
change.
psychological help because when they saw you playing with
Exactly.
puppets in the base medrash.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Well, keep
So
going.
yeah,
So
Rabbi Seipash
he
would
appreciated
suffer through these.
that. Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah, he would suffer through my man. He was like a he's like he had mandatory attendance to my performances in the morning. He didn't have a way out, which is completely fine. But
No, but it seems like you're merging together the world of Talmud and the world of drama, of acting that you came from. Because I
yeah,
mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed that like until this point, like you had spent a good year in MJE, more than that, and you had been through the whole fellowship program, right? But a lot of the fellowship program, you talk about the parsha, you talk about different, you know, that sort of corresponds a little closer to the world of drama. Talmud doesn't, so you have to create your own bridge, it seems.
Rabbi, I think there's I in my learning, I just there were times where the Talmud would be incredibly surprising, where sometimes look, we had a whole class on humor in the Torah, and there were times where I thought that the Talmud was hilarious. I'll explain. Like there was one situation. There was one Mishnah that was dealing with. Okay, so what if now he needs a pruta to propose to her, to propose to his bride, but what if he's giving her dates, like the fruit dates? What if he's giving her dates and he's trying to make a kedushin out of it, but she's eating them while he's giving them to her? This is hilarious, Rabbi. And if people
And
are,
by the way, they're not trying to. What's funny is they're not trying to be funny. You know that this is real.
Yeah. Okay. But if people are sitting in the mirror, in Mea Shearim, and they're going through this, with and they're not stopping to see how hilarious some of these situations are. I think that's a mistake.
Well, I think that's, listen, everybody has to find their own way in. And you and I were talking when you were having those headaches, and I was like, "Oh, this is not good." How's the learning going, Daniel? Every time I open up the Talmud, I get a headache. I'm like, "Oh, that's not good." But first of all, my big Yasher, big rabbinic pat on the back for sticking it out. And I'm so happy we're having this conversation because so much of the depth of Judaism doesn't happen quickly. So much of what's real and profound about being Jewish takes time. It takes effort. It takes sacrifice. And it's very hard. You know that at MJE, we try to make things as simple and as easy as possible. Just come from 8 to 9 o'clock on Wednesday nights, and we will hand you your Judaism on a silver platter. We'll make it simple and easy, user-friendly. The language, all of our flyers, no Hebrew necessary, user-friendly. And by the way, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. The problem is you can't really inspire commitment when everything is simple. Commitment can only come through hard work, self-sacrifice. That's really what yeshiva is about. I mean, I didn't plan for this podcast to be a commercial for yeshiva, but I just think that's so much about what Judaism's about.
Well, I think, after the better part of a year in learning, I've only now just begun. I feel like I've walked up like yeshiva and MJE together was like walking up a cliff towards, and then now I can see like a huge, endless expanse of heritage and Torah, that would take lifetimes to fully grasp. But and I think even I think even the greatest learners would express just as much that the learning itself, or what is available, is extraordinarily expansive and humbling, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But there is a certain level of breaking through to be able to see that, and I think that yeshiva.
Do you think people can break through? See, this is the thing, and maybe I'm going to ask you, a little advice here for people listening. Can people break through and get that expanse? Can they get that aha spiritual connection without the hard work? I know I'm setting you up for an easy answer here, but I want you to speak to that a little, because this is something I really, really struggle with. I spent years in yeshiva learning. I still struggle through certain texts and certain ideas. But I'm always compelled to make things simple, user-friendly, no Hebrew necessary. Just keep things easy and smooth for people. They're tired after a day at work. They're not necessarily interested in breaking their teeth over a Hebrew text. Just make it simple and easy. Get them in, get them out. But then can you see that? Can you see the expanse, like you just so beautifully put it?
Anything worthy of attention, that's worthy of time, it's not going to give that kind of immediate feedback that says, oh, I've accomplished something now. Now I get it. Now I can go to bed and wake up and learn something different. I don't think that Judaism is set up to offer that. I think that it takes an extraordinary amount of effort to work towards something that requires an extraordinary amount of. I mean, the Torah is, when we arrived in yeshiva, and we were talking about all these different levels of grasping the Torah. There was, there was the pashat, the simple understanding. And then there was the deeper levels, and the deeper levels, and then the deeper levels. There was the Torah, the Torah itself started to like expand into like this like three-dimensional space where, you could see the work, or the beginning of the work, the tiny steps of the work that would be required to begin to get closer to this stuff. And you can be scared off. You can be scared by it, and I think it is easy to be scared by it. Many times I think I've been scared by it myself. But and it would be easy, it would be easy to stop and say, oh, it's just a lot. But it requires a deeper strength in people. It requires something, within themselves that says that is ready to, and with courage, take it on. It's.
So what would you say?
There
So Daniel, based on that, what would you say to yourself 2.5 years ago before you started on this spiritual journey? Talk to yourself 2.5 years ago. What would you say, or to someone? It's really not for you, honestly. I'm asking because I'm always looking for help here. Because I live with this struggle. We've had a lot of success over the years with turning a lot of young Jewish people on to Judaism, but I feel that it's getting harder and harder because I'm being pushed more and more to dumb it down, keep it simple, keep it inspirational, get them in, get them out. What would you say to somebody then who doesn't know what you now know from experience?
I'd say to keep pushing forward, to continue. Look, this is something that we talk about in drama, and it's something that we talked about deeply in Yeshiva as well, which is in the realm of curiosity. If you cut off curiosity, you cut off everything. You cut off, your ability to grow in any aspect of life. Curiosity and the ability to fully engage with it, the ability to grow it, the ability to keep it well maintained, like a plant or something, is incredibly important. If you cut it off, if you say, oh, I learned something that I didn't like, oh, I learned something that conflicts with my values, or I learned something that it sounded better to me, and similar idea sounded better to me in this kind of philosophy. So, cutting off curiosity, and embracing, this uncomfortable idea that, oh, I actually don't know many things. There is a world of things that I simply don't know, and growing in comfort with not knowing, I think,
Wow.
is important. I think I don't know, it was helpful to me, because half of the time in yeshiva is like, it was just finishing a day of learning. It's like, well, I feel like an idiot, or there's just
Well, I'm just looking up. I remember this amazing quote from Albert Einstein about curiosity. I'm not finding it, but what he said, this was actually in Life magazine in 1955. They quoted from his, and he was in an interview. He said, the important thing is not to stop questioning, he said. Curiosity, he continued, has its own reason for existing. One cannot help but be in awe when one contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery every day. It's a beautiful line from Einstein. Yeah.
I think that's extraordinary. I think that, look, when I arrived in yeshiva, and certainly at MJE as well, I decided that I was going to ask everything. I was going to ask anything that came to my mind. I would have, I've been, welcomed into this environment, and I am going to ask anything that's on my mind. And my yeshiva bachers, they'll tell you this is exactly what I did for the entire year, was I asked anything. And I burdened almost all the rabbis with this unhinged questioning, which was important to me. I think it's important for Jews to know that we come from a tradition of questioning, that we come from a tradition of deep curiosity. We don't come from a space of, oh, it's just this and you need to know that, and please don't ask anymore. We come from, the way we engage as Jews, the way we engage with the Talmud, the way we engage with God, is through struggle, is through deep deep questioning, is through digging and digging and digging and digging. I spent the year in yeshiva doing a lot of digging, asking, and sometimes even testing the rabbis, like, what are they going to do with this question? What are these Haredi rabbis, going to do with this question? I'm going to say it as I'm going to say it anyway. It's going to come out. Like, what are they going to do with it? And I never received pushback. I'm in the depth of a religious neighborhood in Harnof, and I'm asking things that are so not appropriate for this podcast.
I know we've talked about some of them, but I think that's really what makes it. Listen, you make your teachers teachers. Without these questions posed by students with real curiosity, then all we're doing is just informing. We have to do more than informing.
Right.
We have to enlighten, and by the way, you help flesh it out. Like when you pose a difficult question, this is what I've been I teach a course at YU for young rabbinic students. And I told that, I said, until you guys get in front of a classroom with smart, maybe not Jewishly educated, okay, but smart, inquisitive students, they're going to force you to think in a different way. They're going to force you. I mean, Daniel, you have forced me to go back to the books and try to come up with explanations for things that I really never understood myself fully, and for which yeshiva, in a sense, can't fully prepare you for. All yeshiva is trying to do, not all, is teach you how to think.
Right. That was the sense that I got, especially, from, look, the world is in the United States right now, it's a difficult time. It's a difficult time engaging with people. It's a difficult time talking about difficult subjects. Going through the Talmud, going through the Gemara, and paired with all the questions that I had with the rabbis, I got this sense that the way you come to a deeper understanding of the world and what God expects of us is through questioning and mining and challenging. And I think about this deep work that through the Gemara learning, and I think back to what's going on in the States, in the state of our dialogue, and I'm like, there's far more openness right now in this, in my conversations and with rabbis who wear black hats than there are in many of the spaces that I normally inhabit in the States right now.
That's so fascinating. Oh, that's because there's no bad question, and there's nothing that's off limits. I've seen in the last 10, 20 years, all of a sudden you can't talk about certain things. You can't share a certain perspective, even if you don't believe it, but you want to ask about it. You want to be able to get information. There isn't enough. There's no safety net anymore for people to have a completely honest and open conversation. You can do that in yeshiva. It's funny because the outside world gets the reputation of being the most open and accepting, and we can talk about anything. And the yeshiva gets the reputation of being the most closed, where only certain things are acceptable to discuss or to entertain. And in truth, it's just the opposite. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you. I think that's fascinating.
Right.
I think that's really tell us what's been your most challenging part of your journey towards a more, let's call it observant life, towards a more religious life.
Look, I think I'm, I've been learning, I think I'm still deeply learning. I've made strong gestures towards more engagement. I still think that I'm, or even after you're in yeshiva, I think I'm still just learning and figuring it out and continuing to question, and a lot of my, my wonderful yeshiva classmates were 10 steps ahead of me with where they were in life,
Mm-hmm.
with where they were in their journey. And you and I had spoken many times. It was something that I wrote down in my notes every once in a while. Sometimes when things felt too much, I would write down, I think one of your, not pay me to say this, lessons, it's not an all or nothing game, which is, which allowed me to take a step back, to breathe a bit, and for whatever steps I take in the future, to keep them in check and to make sure that they are genuine steps forward in integrating my learning into my life. I didn't, in yeshiva, everyone's wearing tzitzis, everyone's, or not everyone, many people are very focused, and any step that I wanted to take, genuine. I wanted to be coming from a genuine place, not from peer pressure, not from this or that. And so that's what I've been focused on any move I make forward is that it comes at the right time, and that it's something that I never experienced any pressure from the rabbis or any of my classmates. So
that's great. And you've decided to stay on for another year, which,
well, I never said that. I said I'm thinking about it.
That's what I heard.
Rabbi, my classmates are going to listen to this, and then they're gonna. It's a maybe. I need some time to absorb the last year, but maybe.
And what's it like? It must be wonderful seeing your family again, being back for a little while. Probably feels like you're in another planet.
Yeah, I'm happy to be home. Israel's a beautiful country. But I'm happy to be home right now, and just kind of defrosting a bit. I think
right.
from learning. No, I do not know if I'll be returning. It's a maybe. And
what about the MGE trip? You know that MGE. For those of you listening, MGE every year takes.
I just got back from it.
Yeah, but MGE fellowship trip is July 3rd through the 10th, through the 10th. Yeah, and yeah,
maybe.
This is, by the way, how I do all my recruiting. I put them live on Facebook Live, and then just ask them pointed questions.
Exactly.
Now tell us how much you'll be contributing in your honor for the dinner. Well, Daniel, I want to thank you for being so open. You're always straight, and that's one of the many things I love about you and respect you is your openness and your forthrightness and just being serious about whatever you undertake. I think one of the great messages that's coming out of this is, no pain, no gain. That if we're not willing to really throw ourselves into something, and again, it doesn't have to be in Israel, and it doesn't have to be a year in yeshiva, but I'm inviting people, and I'm doing this off your back, if it's okay, Daniel, to all of our listeners. COVID is beginning to be over in the United States, in New York City. This coming Shabbos will be our first Shabbos, no masks. And a lot of people took them off last Shabbos also, but now it's official. And it's an opportunity for people to come out of our caves and come back into our Judaism and into MGE and to really immerse ourselves in something that's beyond ourselves. Because I think we desperately need it. And I think if we want to, I love the way you put that before, if we want to see that beautiful expanse, then we've got to climb a mountain. We can't expect to see something beautiful by just gliding. It's got to be some kind of pushback, so that there's a push forward, there's a little tension, and then there's growth as a result. And I can't tell you how much nachas, Daniel, you give me, and you give all of us at MGE for the kind of growth you've put yourself through. I give you a huge yesher koach for taking the plunge and going to Israel at a very, very complicated time. It was very smart, because now hopefully acting is going to start coming back. And now, my friends, now you'll know more about Torah so that you can really bring these two worlds together. I love the way you speak about drama and acting and how it's informed your Judaism. Now we have a chance to see, Daniel Ryan Wallach, how your Judaism is going to inform your acting and the rest of your life. Hashem should bless you, my friend, with many, many years of continued spiritual growth. You should continue to study the Talmud, to learn it deeply. You should be zocha. You should merit to become a great Torah scholar. And the way and of course, find the right person at the right time. I guess continue to consult those dating apps. Maybe they won't just find you an organization to come to, but now an actual woman to marry, and be able to create a beautiful Jewish family with all of this wisdom and knowledge. If there's anything you wanted, I don't mean to cut you off and shut you down. If there's any parting words.
That's way too much pressure, Rabbi. I don't know. It's been great.
It's been awesome. Thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate it. And please, everyone, come out to show your love to Daniel and all the other wonderful honorees. We had a very difficult time choosing who the honorees would be this year, because we had you who went off to Israel to study, and we also have our good friend Scott, who was the most avid participant in MJE, and we're honoring him he's getting the MVP award, most valuable participant. That man, Scott, has come on more MJE podcasts and classes and Zoom and Facebook. It's just unbelievable. But we're coming back.
Has he finally moved from Pennsylvania?
No, he's still in Philly. He's been in Philly the whole time. But he's coming back. He's coming back to New York, as a lot of people are. And a little advertisement, this coming Shabbos, I hope you're going to come to the city, because this Shabbos is our coming back Shabbat, and we're having a big blowout Kiddush, expecting a lot of people. And we hope to all see you there. And I look forward, Daniel, to continue learning Torah with you.
Excellent.
Thanks for your time, man.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Have a good one. We're going to sign out here.